One of the most tightly guarded secrets of Hollywood has always been the gender identities of a few stars who were assigned male at birth but lived as women, navigating fame, gender expectations, and a ruthless industry determined to keep up appearances. From dazzling nightclub performers to underground film icons, these vintage celebrities carved out space for themselves in a time when being true to their identity could mean career ruin or worse. Their stories weren't just hidden, they were rewritten, erased, or sensationalized beyond recognition. Here are the top vintage celebrities who were born male but had to keep it hidden during certain periods of their life when Hollywood couldn't handle the truth. Christine Jorgensen. Christine Jorgensen, born George William Jorgensen in the Bronx, New York, was an American entertainer and the first person in the United States to gain widespread fame for undergoing sex reassignment surgery. Although she was not a traditional Hollywood film star, her impact on American entertainment, culture, and discourse was profound. She broke social barriers and became a powerful public figure whose life challenged the rigid gender norms of post-war America. Raised in a working-class Danish-American family, Jorgensen graduated from Christopher Columbus High School in 1945 and briefly attended the New York Institute of Photography. She also served in the U.S. Army during World War II, stationed primarily in the United States. In her early years, she struggled with gender identity, but lacked the language or understanding to describe what she was experiencing. After the war, Jorgensen began researching the concept of gender and sexuality more deeply. Her interest in biology and psychology led her to learn about pioneering European research on transsexualism and hormone therapy. In 1950, driven by a desire to live authentically, Jorgensen traveled to Denmark, where she consulted with endocrinologist Dr. Christian Hamburger in Copenhagen. There, she began a regimen of hormone therapy and, over the course of several months, underwent a series of surgeries that culminated in male to female gender confirmation procedures. She chose the name Christine in honor of Dr. Hamburger. The Danish medical community's involvement, especially at a time when gender-affirming medical care was virtually unheard of in the United States, positioned her at the forefront of what was then a scarcely understood medical frontier. Her return to the United States in 1952 made headlines around the world. The New York Daily News published the front-page headline, "XGI becomes blonde beauty," a sensationalist but era-defining statement that instantly turned Jorgensen into a household name. Overnight, she became a subject of intense public interest, admiration, curiosity, and controversy. News outlets flooded her with interview requests, while religious and conservative groups openly criticized her. Capitalizing on her fame, Jorgensen transitioned into a career in show business. She performed as a nightclub singer, primarily in Las Vegas and various European venues. She also made television appearances, including a 1955 NBC special, where she showcased her performance abilities and poise in front of a national audience. These appearances allowed her to present herself on her own terms, elegant, articulate, and unapologetically herself. While she never acted in major Hollywood films, Jorgensen was closely aligned with the entertainment industry, both as a performer and as a cultural figure. Her mere presence in American media helped chip away at taboos surrounding gender and sexuality. Through her nightclub acts and television specials, she proved that trans individuals could thrive in the public eye at a time when societal acceptance was extremely limited. Her fame came at a cost. Jorgensen often spoke about the psychological toll that public scrutiny took on her. Despite being admired by many for her bravery, she dealt with depression and isolation in later years. The media's obsession with her body, surgeries, and past often reduced her to a spectacle rather than acknowledging her as a full human being. She faced difficulties in romantic relationships and legal restrictions, such as being denied a marriage license in the 1950s because her birth certificate still listed her as male. Still, she remained an outspoken advocate for transgender rights and continued to educate the public about her experiences until her death in 1989. Candy Darling. Candy Darling, born James Lawrence Slattery in Forest Hills, Queens in 1944, was a captivating figure of New York's avant-garde art scene and one of the most recognizable transgender women of the 1960s and 70s. As one of Andy Warhol's superstars, Darling left a lasting mark on underground cinema, queer culture, and gender history. From an early age, Darling was obsessed with the golden age of Hollywood. She idolized actresses like Kim Novak and Joan Bennett spending hours watching old films and perfecting her own glamorous persona in private. Raised by a single mother after her parents' divorce, she struggled with the isolation of growing up as a gender non-conforming child in conservative post-war America. As James Slattery, she was seen as effeminate and theatrical, often targeted by peers. But by the mid-1960s, she had fully adopted the name Candy Darling, began dressing in feminine attire, and started her transition. Her transformation was not only physical but artistic. Candy reimagined her own life as a performance, seamlessly merging identity, fantasy, and rebellion. Darling began frequenting Manhattan's Greenwich Village and the emerging LGBTQ nightlife scene. She quickly found a home among the creatives and misfits at Andy Warhol's Factory, a notorious studio and social club that served as the beating heart of New York's underground art scene. Warhol was drawn to her ethereal looks and magnetic presence, and she soon became one of his most prominent muses. Alongside contemporaries like Holly Woodlawn and Jackie Curtis, Candy Darling starred in several of Warhol's experimental films, most notably Flesh, 1968, directed by Paul Morrissey, and Women in Revolt, 1971, a satire of the women's liberation movement. Her performances were more than camp or parody. They were brave, raw, and unapologetic reflections of gender nonconformity in a time when transgender people were rarely represented in any form of media. Darling's allure lay not just in her beauty, but in her determination to live as the woman she knew herself to be, despite immense societal resistance. Contemporary reviews and later retrospectives consistently describe her as a pioneer of transgender visibility. Her Wikipedia entry describes her as a pioneer for transgender visibility, and a 2024 Los Angeles Times article emphasizes that Candy, who was trans, lived a life ripe for biography. In addition to film, Darling also worked in theater. She appeared in off-Broadway productions written by close friend and collaborator Jackie Curtis, and was cast by the legendary Tennessee Williams in the play Small Craft Warnings, though she was later removed due to tension with the production. Her blend of Hollywood glamour and subversive downtown grit captivated audiences and earned her admirers far beyond Warhol's circle. She also inspired songs by cultural icons Lou Reed's Walk on the Wild Side, features the line, "Candy came from out on the island," directly referencing her, while the Rolling Stones' Citadel is also believed to be influenced by her. Candy Darling's gender history is well documented and affirmed by those who knew her. She lived openly as a transgender woman, and her identity was central to her life and work. Even during an era of severe transphobia and limited medical support, she asserted her womanhood with boldness and glamour. Darling often said she wasn't trying to make a political statement. She just wanted to be a woman. But in simply existing, she became one of the first visible transgender actresses in American culture. Despite her fame in artistic circles, Darling faced severe challenges. Financial insecurity plagued her, as the underground art world rarely offered stable income. Many casting directors and producers refused to hire her for mainstream roles due to transphobic attitudes, despite her talent and screen presence. Her last years were marked by declining health. She was diagnosed with lymphoma in the early 1970s and passed away on March 21, 1974, at just 29 years old. Her final days were spent in the hospital, where she wrote a famous farewell letter that read, "Unfortunately, before my death, I had no desire left for life. I have always wanted to be a star. It's true. Most of the time, I was happy. I guess I was hoping someone would love me." Candy Darling's life, though short, was remarkable in its cultural impact. Holly Woodlawn, born Geraldo Santiago, Franceschi Rodriguez Danhacal in Juana Diaz, Puerto Rico, was a groundbreaking transgender actress, performance artist, and LGBTQ icon, rising to fame as one of Andy Warhol's most vibrant superstars. Woodlawn made a powerful impact through her performances in underground cinema and her unabashed authenticity. More than just an entertainer, she became a cultural force who challenged gender roles, racial marginalization, and the boundaries of artistic expression in an era when transgender people were scarcely visible, much less celebrated. Woodlawn's early life was marked by struggle and self-discovery. Born to a Puerto Rican mother and an American soldier father of German descent, she moved with her family to Miami Beach, Florida, at a young age. But even as a child, she understood that she was different. Her gender identity made her feel like an outsider in a rigidly heteronormative society. At 15, She ran away from home as an act of survival and self-liberation. She hitchhiked her way to New York City, adopting the name Holly from the heroine of Breakfast at Tiffany's, and Woodlawn from a road sign she passed along the way. Upon her arrival in New York, Woodlawn immersed herself in the city's underground queer scene. The late 1960s and early 70s were a crucible of rebellion, creativity, and sexual politics. Within this world, she found refuge and creative expression at Andy Warhol's factory, the bohemian nerve center of New York's avant-garde. Warhol was fascinated by unconventional beauty and subversive identities, and Woodlawn, charismatic, witty, and unapologetically herself, was a perfect fit. Her breakout role came in Paul Morrissey's Trash 1970, where she starred opposite Joe D'Alessandro, playing a spirited and streetwise woman navigating poverty and addiction. Woodlawn brought both humor and poignancy to the screen. Her performance was raw, unscripted, and unforgettable. Film critics noted the unfiltered energy she brought to her roles, blurring the lines between performance and lived reality. The Los Angeles Times later recognized Trash as one of the first films to feature a transgender woman in a leading role without sensationalizing her identity. Woodlawn followed up with an appearance in Women in Revolt 1972, another Warhol Morrissey satire. Alongside fellow trans icons Candy Darling and Jackie Curtis, she skewered the women's liberation movement with biting humor and camp. These films were not just artistic expressions, they were cultural interventions that made visible the complexities of gender and sexuality. Woodlawn's fearless embrace of femininity and theatricality exposed the absurdities of traditional gender roles. One of the most enduring tributes to Woodlawn came from Lou Reed in his 1972 hit song, Walk on the Wild Side. The lyric, Holly came from Miami, FLA, hitchhiked her way across the USA, plucked her eyebrows on the way, shaved her legs, and then he was a she, immortalized her story for millions. Though the wording reflects the outdated language of its time, the song introduced a trans narrative into mainstream pop culture long before society was ready to have an open conversation about gender identity. For Woodlawn, this mention was both a blessing and a burden. It brought global recognition, but also turned her into a symbol, sometimes overshadowing her full humanity and talent. Woodlawn's gender history is extensively documented and verified. She identified as a transgender woman throughout her life and spoke often about her journey. While she used different terminology over the decades, as was common for trans people navigating language in flux, she consistently affirmed her identity as a woman. In later interviews, she said, "I just want to be loved for who I am, not what I am." Major obituaries, such as The Guardian's 2015 tribute, described her as a transgender actor and Warhol superstar. Retrospectives also honor her as a transgender role model and pioneer, acknowledging both her artistic contributions and her cultural importance. As a Latina trans woman, Woodlawn faced intersecting layers of discrimination, transphobia, misogyny, and racism. Even in the progressive art world, she was often marginalized and typecast. Financial insecurity was a constant battle. Though she appeared in several films and stage performances, including cabaret shows and off-Broadway plays, she was rarely offered mainstream roles. In the later years of her life, Woodlawn shifted toward activism. She became a vocal advocate for trans rights and spoke publicly about the challenges faced by trans youth. Her experiences with poverty, marginalization, and institutional neglect informed her passionate support for community-based support systems. In 2014, the Holly Woodlawn Memorial Fund for Transgender Youth was established in her honor by the LGBT Center in Los Angeles. The fund provides housing, medical care, and job training for homeless transgender and gender non-conforming youth, many of whom, like Woodlawn, fled unwelcoming homes in search of safety and freedom. Holly Woodlawn died of cancer on December 6, 2015, in Los Angeles at the age of 69. Her final days were marked by reflection and continued pride in her life's work. In one of her last public statements, she said, "I've had a wonderful life. I regret nothing." Her ashes were scattered in the Hudson River and at the beach in Puerto Rico, a symbolic return to the waters she crossed in her pursuit of selfhood. Jane County. Jane County, born Wayne Rogers in 1947 in Dallas, Georgia, was a revolutionary force in American music and performance art. As the first openly transgender singer in rock history, County broke barriers not only through her music, but also through her unflinching visibility. Her career spanned more than 5 decades, evolving from the gritty glam rock scenes of New York City to international punk stages, all while confronting transphobia, sexism, and cultural conservatism head-on. Known for her fearless persona and provocative lyrics, Jane County's legacy is one of raw artistic rebellion and radical self-expression. County's early life in the conservative American South was marked by hardship and nonconformity. Growing up as Wayne Rogers, she experienced bullying and alienation for her gender nonconformity. As a teenager in the 1960s, she gravitated toward theatricality and androgyny, inspired by the glamour of Hollywood actresses and the gender-bending stylings of artists like Little Richard and David Bowie. She began experimenting with performance and identity even before the term transgender was widely known or used. By the late 1960s, she moved to New York City and immersed herself in the underground art scene, where she found both community and opportunity. Her artistic debut came in 1968, when she was cast in Andy Warhol's controversial stage play Pork, which was based on Warhol's tape-recorded conversations. The play was a satire of sexual politics and fame, and County's participation marked her first high-profile involvement in New York's art scene. She quickly became a fixture at Max's Kansas City and CBGB, iconic venues where punk and glam rock were born. Originally performing under the name Wayne County, she formed Wayne County and the Backstreet Boys, and later Wayne County and the Electric Chairs bands, known for their outrageous stage shows and genre-defying sound. In the 1970s, County was at the forefront of the proto-punk movement. She challenged norms not just through her appearance, but also through her music. Songs like Man Enough to Be a Woman, Toilet Love, and If You Don't Want to Fuck Me, Fuck Off were deliberately confrontational, drawing attention to issues of gender identity, sexuality, and societal hypocrisy. Her music blended punk aggression with glam rock flair, and her performances often included outrageous costumes, makeup, and defiant, often shocking monologues. She had theatrical, raw, and unapologetic qualities that would become hallmarks of the punk genre. County's gender transition became public in the late 1970s, when she adopted the name Jane, inspired in part by screen sirens like Jane Mansfield. This act was more than symbolic. It was political. At a time when trans people were largely invisible or relegated to mockery, County embraced her womanhood openly and insisted that the music industry and audiences do the same. Her transition and gender identity became part of her public and artistic narrative, long before mainstream music or media were ready to handle such complexity. Her 2017 autobiography, Man Enough to Be a Woman, offers a vivid account of her journey, detailing the challenges she faced as a trans woman in the male-dominated worlds of rock and punk. The memoir explores her experiences with homophobia, transphobia, and misogyny, as well as her drug use, sex work, and struggles with poverty. Yet it is also a celebration of survival and resistance. County wrote candidly about the pain of being dismissed or fetishized, but refused to let those experiences define her. Instead, she turned them into art, rage, and spectacle. A 2021 Huck magazine profile affirmed County's historical significance. The now 73-year-old trans woman appeared in Andy Warhol's Pork and went on to become rock's first openly transgender singer. Her Wikipedia entry and other sources consistently confirm her as a verified transgender woman, whose public coming out in the late 1970s was groundbreaking. Despite the music industry's reluctance to embrace a trans front woman, County refused to be erased. Her influence can be traced in later acts like David Bowie, Patti Smith, the New York Dolls, and even early punk legends like the Sex Pistols, who shared her radical aesthetic and political edge. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, Jane County continued performing across Europe and the US, particularly in the UK, where she enjoyed a cult following. Though she never broke into the commercial mainstream, her contributions to music and queer culture were undeniable. She collaborated with numerous artists, remained active in the underground scene, and used her platform to advocate for LGBTQ rights. Her presence was especially influential among queer youth and trans artists who saw in her a rare example of unapologetic authenticity. County passed away in May 2023 at the age of 75. Her death marked the end of an era, but also triggered a renewed recognition of her impact. Tributes poured in from musicians, artists, and LGBTQ activists around the world. Many remembered her as not only a pioneer for trans visibility, but also as a fearless artist who reshaped punk music with her own rules. She remains a foundational figure in the history of queer performance art and gender nonconformity in music. Alexis Arquette. Alexis Arquette, born Robert Arquette in Los Angeles on July 28, 1969, was a talented character actress and one of the earliest openly transgender figures in Hollywood to advocate visibly for trans rights. A member of the famed Arquette acting family, which includes Rosanna Arquette, Desperately Seeking Susan, Patricia Arquette Boyhood, and David Arquette. Scream Alexis's identity and career unfolded under the public spotlight. Her journey from indie film performer to outspoken transgender icon marked a critical chapter in both LGBTQ history and Hollywood's reckoning with gender diversity. Alexis made her film debut in 1986 at the age of 17 in the music video for She's in a Bad Mood by the Lounge Lizards, where she appeared in drag. 2 years later, she made her feature film debut in Last Exit to Brooklyn, 1989, portraying Georgette, a trans sex worker. Her performance was widely praised, with The Guardian later describing it as first-rate. Even before coming out as transgender, Arquette often took on gender non-conforming roles that challenged stereotypes and pushed boundaries. This included small but memorable appearances in cult films such as Jumpin' at the Boneyard, 1991, Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, 1994, and Bride of Chucky, 1998. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, Arquette lived and worked publicly under her birth name, often taking on flamboyant, queer-coded characters. But it wasn't until the mid-2000s that she began living openly as a woman and publicly identified as a transgender person. She began transitioning in the early 2000s and went public with her identity around 2006. That same year, she starred in the documentary Alexis Arquette, She's My Brother, which detailed her transition journey and explored the challenges of navigating Hollywood as a trans woman. Alexis's transition was met with both media attention and public support, but also highlighted the persistent transphobia and lack of representation in mainstream entertainment. While her siblings were widely celebrated in the industry, Alexis often spoke about how her gender identity affected casting opportunities and how she was frequently overlooked for meaningful roles. In various interviews, she criticized the industry for sidelining trans actors or relegating them to caricatured roles. Despite this, she continued to act, perform, and use her voice as a fierce advocate for transgender rights. Arquette's advocacy went beyond her own experience. She used her platform to highlight issues faced by the broader transgender community, including healthcare access, employment discrimination, and public misunderstanding. She appeared at numerous LGBTQ events and pride parades, speaking openly about the psychological and emotional aspects of her transition. Her visibility was especially significant during the early 2000s, a time when trans people were rarely seen or heard in Hollywood, and often faced discrimination, both on and off screen. Born into a family known for its artistic freedom, Alexis acknowledged that she was fortunate to have support from her siblings and parents. In interviews, she credited her family with giving her the space to explore her gender expression even as a child. In a quote shared by The Guardian, she stated that her siblings allowed her to run free. Her sister Patricia, in particular, became a vocal ally, defending Alexis's dignity and legacy after her death. Despite her strong public presence, Alexis faced personal struggles in her later years. She battled HIV-related health issues, which took a toll on her physically and emotionally. She also reportedly dealt with addiction and periods of mental health difficulty, which she never tried to conceal or sanitize for the public. In the years leading up to her death, she reduced her public appearances but remained a revered figure within the LGBTQ community. Alexis Arquette died on September 11, 2016. At the age of 47, surrounded by family, according to Public. Statements from her relatives: she passed away while listening to David Bowie's Starman, a fitting tribute to a life lived courageously and defiantly outside the mainstream. Her death was widely covered in the media, and tributes poured in from artists, actors, and activists alike. Patricia Arquette's emotional tributes helped cement Alexis's place not just as a performer, but as a key figure in the cultural fight for trans acceptance. Her contribution to both cinema and queer representation remains significant. In the years following her death, she has been cited as a foundational figure for transgender visibility in Hollywood. Trans actors such as Laverne Cox and Trace Lysette have acknowledged the importance of those like Alexis, who walked difficult paths so others might have it easier. Alexis Arquette's story is not simply one of celebrity or identity. It is one of perseverance, courage, and a deep love for performance. Whether she was playing a minor role in a cult film or standing on stage at an LGBTQ fundraiser, Arquette consistently used her visibility to shift public conversations about gender identity. Thanks for watching. If these powerful hidden stories from Hollywood's golden era opened your eyes to the struggles and strength behind the spotlight, don't forget to like and subscribe for more rare and revealing histories. Got a forgotten icon or buried truth you think deserves the spotlight next? Drop your ideas in the comments, we would love to dig in. Until then, stay curious and stay tuned for more untold tales from Hollywood's shadowy past.